Reacher, Finley, and Roscoe exit the train station without obtaining anything. Regrettably, after calling the police, they had to leave Molly, who is bleeding out. They couldn't be held accountable or linked to this after all. They stop at the dog's owner's home on the way back, and Reacher sees the dog laying on his side in the yard. Reacher ultimately loses his furry because it's obvious that the new owner doesn't care for him. After giving the man a blow to the nose, he locks him up and takes the dog with him to a no-kill shelter. Reacher is bearing the weight of the world on his shoulders because Joe and Molly are both dead. On the way out of town, he passes by the farm and wonders why there is so much animal feed there. Reacher notices the same burr on the ground that was on Paul's shoes. Reacher stops by KJ's table at the diner in an attempt to acquire some answers. KJ gets bitch slapped to the face as retaliation for his issue after some angry comments said about Roscoe. But as Finley and Roscoe approaches with gun drawn, Kleiner arrives. Unfortunately, Earl, the owner of the diner, accuses Reacher of starting the fight, while Teal fires Roscoe for fumbling the files and lying. The problem is Kleiner won't file a complaint because doing so will draw attention to his own company. Reacher summarizes that the gun box given to Roscoe may hold the key to the case. They discover a key after checking the box out, which directs them to Mosley the barber, because a man growing bald shouldn't require a weekly visit to the barber, right? It turns out that Gray had kept a box of documents on this investigation for Roscoe. In the files, Reacher finds it weird that they have 116 cattle. This then results in the production of animal feed. Now with that odd number, it would allow all the animal feed to be brought in without raising any suspicions. When the number of cattle reaches to 120, it will get checked out by the state authorities. All of these donations to the community appears to be used as leverage against the residents. After all, if you bought their devotion, they would have to keep quiet or risk losing funding. Roscoe wonders why Margrave, but Margrave appears to be a wonderful location for distribution because it is connected to at least 6 different states. They may exploit this to evade any police activities. They also understood that Gray was murdered and did not do self-deletion. Reacher tells Roscoe to control her rage as they leave. Neatly calls to say that she has important information, once more speaking in code for Reacher to overhear so he can tell it to her. It turns out that JW on Joe's note was actually Jimmy Dupree Waltz, an EPA inspector, but he was shot dead inside his house. Given that the murder weapon had a silencer and that nothing was taken from his house, the FBI concluded that it was a random robbery. Seems a little fishy though. The post-mortem beating of the body is consistent with what happened to Joe. The pieces are now starting to fit together. Additionally, a Memphis police officer named O'Coin found discrepancies with JD's case as well. In fact, he was investigating it through studies on harmful pollutants. In any case, when Reacher brings up the animal feed, Neagley thinks it's strange having so much animal feed too. This is why Reacher likes Neagley. At the coroner's office, Roscoe looks through Gray's files and pulls up the image of his head, in particular the one that shows the laceration. Although it is said that he hurt his head because of being severely intoxicated, but it is possible that he was struck by a blunt object. Zooming in reveals the micro lacerations, and Jasper thinks it kinda looks like a diamond. If we recall, Teal happens to use a diamond as a cane. So when Roscoe arrives at the station, she promptly punches him in the face, and Finley had to drag Roscoe out of the building. Roscoe must remain covert for the time being, since if she stays in town, she will surely be arrested. Roscoe steps in to take care of Charlie and the children as a result of it. Meanwhile, Neagley and Reacher encounters a few police officers, among them is O'Coin, and are able to acquire the moniker The Viking. Neagley and Reacher talks to Finley in the police cruiser, and Finley decides to conduct an unauthorized search. Extreme times demand for even more extreme tactics. In relation to that, it turns out that the police working alongside O'Coin is dishonest, and after finally shooting O'Coin, cries out that it would be a clean death. Neagley and Reacher retaliate by kicking the metal screen onto the officer's back, forcing him to drive off the road into the lake. The officer acknowledges that he has been intimidated into submission by dangerous people as the water starts seeping in, but other than that, he is at a loss for words. While Neagley and Reacher manages to escape and return to land, Neagley makes the decision to investigate the Viking further and learn what they know. Finley enters Kleiner's office after hours in the dark to search, but he comes upon Kleiner, who had his neck cut, as he makes his way to the office. Finley guesses he isn't in control of the levers now after all, because he's dead. Reacher studied the image of Kleiner's wounds that Finley was able to collect. The wounds appear to have been caused by a hitman from Venezuela. Reacher speculates that Kleiner was killed because the big boss was dissatisfied with his work. Teal manages the police station calls and writes a statement for the media. When Finley arrives, KJ does too, and he starts throwing punches right away. He is obviously upset and thinks Finley murdered his father. Because of this, Teal orders Finley to be quiet and stop looking into things while he handles KJ. That's not at all suspicious to bench Finley off the case. Roscoe goes up to see Charlie and the girls, but Charlie is a disaster, unpredictable, and obviously paranoid. Picard leaves after making a vow to get in touch afterwards. Reacher acquires a van to maintain his secrecy as Finley and Reacher embarks on a stakeout. They watch Kleiner's warehouse side by side as we discover more about Finley's past. It turns out his wife passed away, so he didn't have a broken marriage or a divorce. The agonizing recollection of his wife were too much for him to handle, so he fled Boston because it was a reminder of how he failed her. Kleiner's nephew Dawson is seen at the warehouse getting ready for another delivery in less than 24 hours following the passing of Kleiner. They are alarmed by this as well, so they follow after him. Dawson checks into a motel to get some rest, which gives Finley and Reacher the opportunity to sneak into the truck and discover what he's hiding. The truck is empty though, which means he's not sending money abroad. Reacher calls William from Joe's contact, who sadly has already passed away this morning from a mugging. They are able to reach Professor Castillo, and Reacher gives her orders if she wants to live. Reacher rushes over there to prevent the hitman from approaching her since it appears that they haven't gotten to her yet. The safe house is now in jeopardy after Roscoe notices a light and urges Charlie to gather the children to escape. Roscoe goes outside to check, but she made some noise alerting the hitman, so she yells at Charlie to run for it. Thankfully, Roscoe shoots the man using a grenade and some stressful, nerve-wracking diversion strategies in the wood to halt the two hitmen. Roscoe calls Charlie to come out and they hike to a diner to meet with Picard. When they got to the diner, Charlie verifies that she was aware that Paul was in trouble. One day, Kleiner urges Paul to accompany him to Venezuela so they can meet one of his clients. Kleiner makes him a tempting offer for 4x his previous salary and includes a huge bonus. Also, he will only need to work a limited amount of time. The fact is that everything there was a trap because Kleiner has Paul's information and documentation of transaction, so he is forced to work there in this field whether he likes it or not. Getting Paul to transfer those funds was actually money laundering to the highest degree. Then he is made to see the crucifixion of another man in front of him to show him how serious they are. Reacher pretends to be Castillo's attorney while wearing a suit. She acknowledges that she and Joe were working together when he meets her at the station. The professors were assisting the agents globally against mass undetectable counterfeiting. Joe notices that Georgia was where the superbills were being produced. Reacher feels a chill going down his back and realizes he's got everything backward. It turns out that the money is actually being made in the US and sent to Venezuela. Realizing the significance of this, Reacher approaches Lieutenant Diaz outside and asks him to assist in keeping her safe but off the record. Diaz agrees to help, and when Reacher leaves, he spots someone following him. Reacher makes a run for it to an alley and fights the attacker by surprise attack. When that doesn't work, he tries to get the upper hand until he whips out his tie to fight. He beats him by strangling the attacker with the tie while he dangles off of it. Once the fight is over, Reacher goes back to the group. Reacher lands in Atlanta and is met by Finley at the airport. Reacher wears a funny t-shirt that is better than wearing a white shirt stained with blood and admits to Finley that he was playing hangman with an assassin. Additionally, he informs Finley that there might be another dishonest official operating behind the scenes that they are unaware of, because Joe should have locked down the paper that creates the bills. Stevenson was concerned and contemplating leaving the town with his partner Emma because Emma is expecting. She believes they should leave and start over. Unfortunately, the previous black truck showed up with 4 men wearing latex suits and a crowbar inside. After a quick appearance at Kleiner's funeral, they pick up Hubble's car from the mechanic, but Reacher notices the mechanic using cat litter for an oil spill. The two are taken to an awful sight at the Stevenson's home. Stevenson and Emma were both killed while they are chained to a chair facing each other. This murder is unique because Emma was tormented in front of Stevenson due to the placement of mirrors all around them, which suggested that someone assumed Stevenson knew something, but he didn't. Teal decides to dismiss Finley from his position because he is useless. The last officer in the station, Officer Baker, who Reacher doubts is a good officer. So he tests Officer Baker at the diner and tells him he's going to turn Hubble's house upside down to get some info. Also, Reacher thinks Finley is the cause of the murders considering he was in Margrave the entire time when these murders were happening. Reacher breaks into Hubble's house that evening to set up for a break-in, but first he needs to get some clothes because the joking t-shirt won't do it. Reacher starts painting his face to camouflage and sets out. Reacher kills the driver first, and luckily the driver wasn't able to make any noise when struggling. Then Reacher flashes the headlight to get one of them to check it out. When the intruder checks the car, Reacher attacks him at the back to end his life. Then he silently sneaks inside and quickly kills the intruder, but before dying he makes some noise alerting the last 2 intruders. One of them follows Reacher's footprint which lead to a closed door. When he opens the door, it was just his shoes and Reacher snuck behind him, ending his life. Dawson shows up shortly afterwards, shooting at Reacher, but he uses the man as a human shield. Then they engage in close combat while Dawson uses his crowbar. Reacher is knocked into the pool, and when he regains consciousness, they continue their fight. Luckily, Reacher is able to reach for his gun, ending Dawson's life with multiple shots. Reacher calls Roscoe after the battle to inform her what he found out. It turns out the US dollars are all the same size, and when combined with Paul's clever accounting, he learned that he had been providing Kleiner with steady supplies of fresh $1 notes from cash-intensive businesses like casino and payday loans. After that, these notes would be delivered to Margrave from all around the nation. To return to the animal feed, Kleiner Chemicals appears to have created a method to remove the ink off the bills. Animal feed is the main element in these notes, which are then stripped of their original painting after being washed off, battered, and reprinted to resemble a conventional $100 bill, a large-scale fraud scheme. Then, the bills will be sent to Venezuela overseas. Reacher goes to Jobling's garage because it appears that there may be some info about this. He informs Finley before going, but Finley spots 3 men coming toward his room from the outside. Finley is able to avoid the men by following Reacher's direction and sprinting off into his car to safety. He shoots the attacker's tires to ensure he won't be followed. Reacher and Finley arrives at Jobling's home, discovering it has been burnt down. Joe's notes send them to Jobling's other address, which belongs to his parents. The same box is inside the garage, but these ones are filled to the top with $100 bills. They hit the jackpot and call Picard to meet at the farmhouse to get him to shut down the operation. Neagley reveals to Reacher that the Viking has been dead for some time, and his partner is still alive and working. We find out the Viking is Picard actually. Reacher sees KJ, Teal, and Picard all aiming at him and Finley when he finally catches up with Finley, and they have stepped into a trap. Reacher was threatened with a gun, 3 against 2, with the odds stacked against them. It turns out Picard was lured in by the money in this counterfeiting job, and to make matters worse, Roscoe is being held as a hostage. Their demands are recorded through Roscoe while KJ is holding the phone. If Paul isn't returned to KJ, he'll treat Roscoe, Charlie, and the kids the same way as he treated Morrison. Turns out the Coast Guard blockade is the root of the problem. Reacher assumes Kleiner was murdered by the Venezuelans, but it turns out KJ murdered his own father, imitating the Venezuelans, making it appear that they have done it. Additionally, KJ paid Picard's partner to kill the Memphis agent. Both Molly's and Joe's death are KJ's doing. Joe's body was also kicked by Dawson, and Morrison covered him. Reacher is instructed to find Hubble, and Picard is entrusted to keep an eye on him at all times. When Reacher and Picard are traveling, they stop at a diner where Reacher orders a peach pie for himself and determines where Hubble's location is at. Reacher determines that Paul is in Augusta, which is 2 hours away from Margrave, after consulting the map. Before leaving the restaurant, Reacher stabs a tire with a fork, causing them to come to a stop to engage in a standoff. With guns in their hands and warning from Reacher that they both must remain alive for now, Picard swears not to shoot him. Reacher has different plans and shoots down Picard, and then departs for Augusta, where he would meet Paul. They return to the police station where Reacher uses his car to slam Baker against the cell bars and save Finley. The 3 gathers as much weapons and ammo as they can at this moment. Neagley arrives while they are working and planning for the battle. Naturally, they go to Mosley's to make a plan to get the children, Charlie, and Roscoe out of Kleiner's storage facility. Reacher makes a fire to distract all the bad guys inside before the battle begins. Reacher, Finley, and Neagley works together to kill as many thugs as they can, whilst Paul's mission is to get his wife and children out of the middle of the action. Hubble saves his kids while taking out a thug and then taking the kids out. Reacher goes to Charlie and Roscoe, whom he manages to free from their cuffs. Reacher gives Roscoe a gun to lead Charlie out, and then she goes back in. Picard and Finley engage in a gunfight and then a close combat fight. Finley grabs onto his gunshot wound and then slices him up on a slicer. Teal and Roscoe fight each other given what happened to Gray, and she puts an end to it by shooting him multiple times in the head, one which goes right through his eyes. Reacher is now left with KJ and engages in a gunfight, but Reacher is somehow missing his shots compared to the start, landing all his shots. KJ has a long-ass monologue while playing cat and mouse with Reacher. Reacher sets him up with noise, getting a jump on him, and leaves him to burn to death. Reacher escapes the explosion and the two quickly kiss. The next day before Reacher leaves town, Roscoe gives him her number and Reacher tells her to become the new mayor. Then Reacher goes to meet Finley at the diner to chat and eat the infamous peach pie. Reacher thinks it's mid and they laugh it off. Then Reacher leaves town by walking and tries to hitch a ride. Well, that's it for Reacher Season 1. If you want Season 2, comment peach pie. And if you like this video, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.